Hello, welcome to the SoulLife Psychology Podcast. I'm Dr. Toni Reilly. The aim of this podcast is to help you understand yourself through your emotional patterns and soul awareness. Each episode offers a simple insight to help you make sense of what you feel and why you respond the way you do. In the last episode, we spoke about awakening. That was our first episode. And this episode, we will get closer to the heart of human nature. We're talking about bruises, not physical bruises, emotional bruises, the ones you can't see. We're going to talk about why they hurt, or why things hurt the way they do, and why certain moments hurt so much more than others. Also, you'll come to understand why your reactions make sense. Bruises are the emotional imprints that shape how you react and how you protect yourself, how you behave in your relationships. Let's begin. Bruises are emotional patterns that your soul chose to live through before you were born. They were chosen so that you get to experience emotion, awareness, and personal growth. A bruise is an insecurity inside. The bruise also instills critical elements of your inherent character, which forms a super important part of the human experience, and every human has them. Bruises form through early childhood experiences. They can start from just a few innocent words said by a parent or circumstances that you didn't even choose, like having an absent parent. The bruises form through the natural reactions of the adults around you, often without anyone meaning any harm. Emotional bruises explain why certain things affect you very deeply and why some moments trigger really strong reactions and why emotional patterns repeat throughout your life. Bruises are predictable, they're recognizable, and they're universal. Every single person on the planet has emotional bruises. When people first hear about emotional bruises, they often look for fault within themselves, or they wonder what did they do wrong, or what could they have done better. They couldn't have handled anything better because bruises form through normal human interaction. No one actually did anything wrong. Children adapt because they need connection, not because something's faulty in them. The bruise isn't proof of damage or trauma. It's proof of sensitivity. And sensitivity is not a flaw. You are born to live through the effects of your emotional bruise or bruises. It's just part of being human. Bruises form through everyday childhood moments that seem small, but they leave an imprint. It's something simple like being told not to cry or being ignored when you were upset, being in trouble for getting your clothes dirty, being compared to a sibling, being adopted or born into a family dynamic where one or both parents is absent. No one's bad. The bruise is supposed to form, and it does. Let's talk about the life of a bruise. A bruise begins with impact. A moment where something happens emotionally, where a child feels ignored or confused, rejected or unsafe. Something terrible didn't necessarily happen, but because something didn't feel the way it needed to for that child, the child reacts because they're hurt. And to counter the feeling, they defend themselves emotionally. They adapt their behavior to avoid feeling the pain again. Fairly quickly, the bruise settles down. The experience gets pushed down because you get on with life, which is what we do. That is how the reaction becomes automatic. The behavior becomes a default reaction. Eventually, the bruise becomes part of your identity. And the child grows up believing, this is who I am. Actually, it is how they learn to protect themselves. And life goes on. Each time the bruise is poked, it flares up again. The reaction is immediate. It's very personal and it's impossible to control. Until awareness becomes unavoidable, that's when change begins, and it can take a long time. We can be a long way into our life before we wake up to what's going on with our bruise or bruises. I always like to learn from real life examples. So I'm going to give you one of mine, just so that you can have a little think about things or a thing that may have influenced you in your life. Let me share with you an example of how the reaction feels through one of my personal and way out of proportion experiences. When I was 5, my sister and I were changing out of our school uniforms. My mother made some innocent comment about our different body shapes. And even though this is true, my 5-year-old self focused on the comparison, and I saw my body as disproportionate, even though it's not, and it never was. Nothing was actually even said, but I developed an obsession that I had a big bum. The reaction shows up as my choice in clothing, always covering that area up. I compared my body to everybody else's, never seeing mine as adequate. In my mind, I was the wrong shape. Can I also mention that there was another incident for me when I was 5 at school that really affected me or bruised me emotionally? We'll cover that another time. This is just one example. There are so many examples that are nothing like this one, which I'll speak about over time, mine and others. The purpose of Bruises. So Bruises exist so that you can learn about your emotions, what causes a response. They guide your personal evolution, and they are the foundation of what people call patterns. Later, the same emotional bruises help you recognize those patterns, to understand them, and eventually move beyond them. When you understand your bruise, you stop being blindsided by your reactions, and you stop believing there's something wrong with you. And this is why recognizing a bruise can feel like a huge relief. For the first time, your reactions make sense. You realize you aren't less than, or you weren't too much, for example. Despite what you may have been told by a parent or a partner, or what you've been telling yourself, you were just protecting yourself. That understanding changes how you relate to yourself, and the reaction doesn't disappear overnight, but it no longer feels confusing or really personal. And that shift is a pivotal moment in your growth. Bruises don't even make sense. They border on ridiculous, and they are insecurities because they belong to the owner of the bruise. Nobody else gets them. It's an inner feeling, and people torture themselves internally. In my case, my reaction was to cover up my bum. My bruised logic told me that if I covered the area, no one would judge me. The truth is, no one could care less, or as we might say in Australia, no one gave a shit. People do not see us in the way that we see ourselves. In truth, others are focused on their bruising. It's kind of crazy, but it's cool when you understand it. So for me, this body dysmorphia passed, finally, when I turned 30. By then, I'd had 3 children. What a relief it was when something clicked and I saw my body had done a great job, and that it looked great too after 3 children. So I stopped wasting energy and thoughts on seeing myself negatively or as not good enough. I stopped attacking myself, and it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Damn, that felt good. Yet the not good enough feeling created people-pleasing behaviour. That was another side effect of the initial bruising. For me, the feeling actually was less about judgment and more about not feeling good enough. I rarely stated my needs. I was very easygoing, never getting into arguments, not even in my marriage. In 16 years, we never had an argument. And eventually it takes its toll, and it took its toll on me. An emotional bruise forms in a very, very simple way. A child expresses themselves freely. An adult reacts from their own discomfort, stress, or unresolved bruises. The child feels confusion, pain, or misunderstood. And to avoid that pain, the child adapts. That adaptation becomes behaviour. And over time, the behaviour becomes default and the bruise deepens. This happens to every person. It all happens subconsciously. Every bruise reflects a moment where being yourself just didn't feel good. In the latest language, they would say the child didn't feel safe. But another way to put it is they just didn't feel like they could be themselves. Think of a child who sees people in the bedroom at night, spirits. Maybe they're scared. They run into the parents' room for comfort, and the parents tell them that they're making it up and send them back to bed. The child doesn't mention the visits ever again and does not ask for help. They may cry, but not tell anyone, and they don't show that sensitivity. They'll hide this aspect of themselves, maybe cry at night when no one can see. And this is how they adapt behaviour, changing it to stay safe. Let's talk a bit about the 5 bruises. The SoulLife Bruises system also, I want to mention, is influenced by the work of Lise Bourbeau. There are 5 emotional bruises: rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. Most people carry one dominant bruise and sometimes 2. Each bruise creates predictable behaviour. It develops a familiar emotional response, a way of protecting yourself. You don't need to analyse them. Just listen for anything that you might recognise. Often the positive aspect of the bruise or the gift gets overlooked because the reaction is more noticeable. So the bruise can cause us vulnerability, but it also gives us capacity in other areas. Your bruises explain why certain people trigger you, just annoy you, make you feel a certain way. Some bruises support other bruises, while some bruises repel. So this depends who goes together and who doesn't really get along. Bruises also explain emotional loops that keep repeating. Why you withdraw, why you confront, why you overgive, and a whole gamut of other things. Once you recognize your bruise, reactions that once felt overwhelming begin to make sense. And when they make sense, they stop running your life. I have seen people experience profound shifts simply by recognizing their bruise. And the moment when they realize, this is who I am, this is my bruise reacting, that recognition is when the healing begins. And it's really important to say that learning about emotional bruises is not about digging up the past. It's about awareness in the present so that day to day, your relationships become smoother and life is just easier. You don't need to relive anything necessarily. Recognition is enough. Just before I give your practical takeaway, I want to let you know that I am opening SoulLife Psychology intake for people who sense there's more to life or more to how they experience emotion and connection than they've been taught to understand. This work is for those who are intuitive, perceptive, and aware. You might not even know it, but trust your intuition if you're drawn. But maybe you want a framework that gives language and structure and depth to what you already feel. I work with intimate groups, so the work remains experiential and through lived experience, not theory, not theoretical at all. If you have been considering this training and it's calling you, I'm inviting you in. Many people who enter the program intend it to become a professional skill or to become a practitioner or incorporate with existing skills, and others do it for personal understanding, and both are valid. So if you'd like to learn these tools, you're welcome to explore the SoulLife Psychology Practitioner certification. The link is in the show notes. Now for your practical takeaway. This week, notice which bruise feels familiar. You don't have to analyze it and you don't need to fix it, just notice. once you know, that awareness is the beginning of emotional freedom, and it is the best feeling. Just a reminder, if you have a question for me or you'd like me to focus on something in future episodes, go to the show notes and fill in the form. In the next episode, we're going to talk about patterns. Thank you for joining me. If this work resonates with you, subscribe and stay connected and let your friends know. Remember, awareness is the ultimate activism.